return shadow. Last winter, I took a trip to Morocco, mostly for the colors, the markets, the food. I stayed in Marrakesh for a while, then decided to venture deeper into the country, away from the crowds. A local driver offered to take me to a small village in the desert. "Old place," he said. "Quiet, good for photographs." And it was. The village was a scattering of sun-faded houses, barely anyone in sight. I wandered through its narrow alleys, snapping pictures. Doors, windows, stray cats. At the edge of the village was a crumbling wall overlooking a canyon. I took a photo of my shadow on that wall, long and sharp under the afternoon sun. Later, back at the riad, I flipped through my photos. One of them stopped me cold. It was the shot of my shadow, but there were two shadows, mine, and another standing beside me, a few inches taller, shoulders broader, and where my arms were at my sides, the second shadow's arms were reaching out, just slightly. I convinced myself it was an optical trick, an overlap from a nearby rock maybe. I deleted the photo, but the next morning, when I went through my phone again, it was back. Same photo, same two shadows. Only now, the second shadow was closer. I tried deleting it again. This time, it vanished completely. I told myself to forget it. It was just some glitch. That night, I dreamed I was back at the wall. The sun was gone. Everything was gray. I stood facing my own shadow, and across from me, in perfect silence, something stood where the second shadow had been. It had my shape, but it didn't move when I did. It stared at me without eyes. And just before I woke up, it tilted its head slightly, as if listening. When I returned home, I didn't think about it much. A strange travel memory, nothing more. Until a week later, I was brushing my teeth when I noticed it. My shadow on the bathroom wall lagged. I moved. It followed, half a second too late. I tried again. Same delay. Then the worst part, it smiled. My face was neutral, but the shadow's mouth curled upward. I stopped sleeping well. I started filming myself, tracking my shadow's movements in mirrors, on sidewalks, on the walls of my apartment. Every now and then, it would fall out of sync, just for a second, just enough to remind me that something followed me back. I stopped posting online, stopped going out at night. The light in my apartment stays on 24/7, because sometimes, when the lights are off and I'm turning to leave a room, I hear footsteps that aren't mine, and I see something just at the edge of my vision. A second shadow, waiting, always a step behind. The face at the top of the 100 steps. When I was visiting Japan last spring, I spent a few days in a quiet town far from the major cities. It was the kind of place where the streets fall silent after sunset, and the air smells like wet stone and incense. I was staying at a small inn, run by an old woman, who spoke almost no English, but she was kind and always left tea out for me at night. On my second evening, I went out for a walk. The locals had told me about a place called the 100-Step Stairway. It led from the base of a wooded hill up to a tiny, abandoned shrine. They said it was a local curiosity, something people avoided after dark. Of course, that made me want to see it. It took some time to find. The stairway was hidden between overgrown hedges, moss-covered and uneven. But I counted as I climbed. 1, 2, 3. The higher I went, the quieter everything became. No wind, no insects, no distant city hum. Just my breath and the crunch of my boots. Around the 70th step, I noticed something strange. The stone handrail was cracked in several places, and a deep gouge ran along the left wall, as if something had been dragged up. I kept going. At step 95, I started to feel cold. Not chilly. Cold, as if I had stepped into a freezer. My breath fogged. I could see my shadow in the dim moonlight, but it looked distorted, stretched. Step 98, step 99, step 100. And then I looked up. At the very top of the stairs was the shrine. Small, weathered, unremarkable. But above it, in the trees, I saw a face. Pale, upside down, hanging just slightly into the light. The features were twisted, not with pain, but with something else. Joy. It was smiling. Its mouth was too wide. Its eyes were fixed directly on mine. I froze. My legs wouldn't move. And then, without a sound, the face tilted further, as if crawling down from the treetops. I turned and ran. I don't remember how I got down those steps. I just remember hearing no footsteps behind me. Nothing. But the cold never left my back, as if the air itself were following. Back at the inn, I told the old woman what I'd seen. She didn't answer. She just stared at me. Then she asked, in broken English, "Did you count the steps?" I nodded. 100. She looked down at her hands. There are only 99. I returned to the stairway the next morning. The path was blocked by a wooden gate I hadn't seen before. A handwritten sign hung from it. I couldn't read it, but I took a photo. Later, I showed it to a friend who could read Japanese. It said, "The 100th step is not yours. Do not look up." Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel like I'm climbing again, step by step. And somewhere, just before I reach the top, I feel it waiting, smiling. The drowning path. I left home at the same time I always did, 7:18 a.m. The air was cold and wet, and fog clung low to the canals, swallowing rooftops and softening the glow of the street lamps. Everything felt slower, muted. My bike tires ticked quietly over the bricks as I moved through the narrow streets. Houses drifted past like ghosts themselves, their curtains still drawn, chimneys inactive. It was a weekday, but I hadn't passed a single person. The usual route to school was a comfortable routine. I could take it half asleep. Turn left at the cafe, pedal past the bakery with the blue awning, and cut across the footbridge over the East Canal. I liked that bridge. It creaked a little, but it was solid, wooden, old, but familiar. That morning, though, the bridge looked different. I didn't notice at first. I was riding slowly, fighting the wind. But when I reached the edge of the canal, something made me stop. I don't know why. There was no sound, no reason. I just froze at the edge of the bridge. It wasn't broken. It hadn't collapsed, but it looked wet. The planks were slick and swollen, darker than usual, like they'd been soaked for days. The metal bolts glistened with something that wasn't rain. Still, I rolled forward, one foot down, then the other. As my front tire touched the first board, I heard it. A second step, but not behind me, beneath. I stopped moving. The air tightened. No ducks, no bikes, just me, and the sound of footsteps under the bridge. I crouched slightly and looked down between the wooden slats. The water was dark, barely moving. At first, I saw nothing. Then, just for a moment, I saw legs. Not mine. Bare. Too long. Moving with mine. I stood up so fast I nearly dropped the bike. There was nothing there. Just the canal. Just the fog. I should have turned back. Instead, I kept going. Slowly. One pedal at a time. The bridge creaked. That was normal. But the weight of the sound was off. It didn't match my steps. I was halfway across when something soft brushed my ankle. I looked down. Nothing. But it felt like a hand. Cold, damp, barely touching. I pedaled faster. I hit the far side and rolled off onto the path, heart pounding, hands shaking. I looked back. The bridge was empty. No sound. Just fog. I was late for class that day. Couldn't concentrate. Everything felt disconnected. Familiar places seemed off. A classroom door I'd opened 100 times felt like I had never seen it before. At lunch, I joined my friends at our usual table. I sat next to someone I'd known since we were kids, Jonas. We always sat together, but I couldn't remember anything about him. His birthday, his last name, even what his voice sounded like. I went home early, claimed I felt sick. The truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment on the bridge, when I looked down and saw legs moving under mine, shadowy, flickering just below the surface, like they were watching me through the planks. I checked my phone that night. I'd taken a picture of the canal from the bridge, like I often did, but it wasn't there. Not deleted, not moved. It just never existed. There was a new photo, though, one I didn't remember taking. It was blurry, dark, but I could make out the edge of the canal, the bridge behind it, and in the water, half submerged, something that looked like a face, eyes wide open, mouth slightly open too. The skin was stretched too tight, too pale. It was looking up. The next day, I didn't take the bridge. I looped around the long way, through the main square, and past the church. It added 15 minutes, but I didn't care. Still, something followed me. I'd turn corners and hear a splash behind me. Not loud, just enough to make me glance back. Nothing was ever there. 3 days later, I found wet footprints on my doorstep. Small, bare. No one in my family said anything. I cleaned them up before school. But that night, I woke up and found a puddle at the base of my bed. The water was clean, clear, but it smelled like algae and rust. Last week, I passed the bridge again. I didn't cross it. I just stood at the edge. It looked normal, dry, safe even. But I noticed something strange. There was no reflection. Not in the water. Not mine. Not the buildings. Nothing. Just black. Like the water wasn't water anymore. More like a hole. I haven't crossed that bridge since. I still bike the long way. I avoid that street if I can. I've tried to forget what I saw, what I felt. But every few nights, I wake up to the sound of dripping and the shadows on my bedroom wall. They don't move like mine.